Geo, we're back. We're back with another one of our. We had a conversation just before we pressed record, like we usually do, and we were talking about how to help our sales teams do better with closing. Now, we had a conversation yesterday about ways in which you can close and how closing starts really from the first interaction. But we focused at sort of the end of the sales cycle, recognizing that closing had to be prevalent the whole way through. Why don't we now take it back to the beginning, right? So like, how do we minimize objections throughout the entire sales process? And from the very beginning, like, what do we have to think about when it comes to like, the tonality that's involved and how you build rapport with a potential client from the get-go? And by the way, we're talking about when someone's like, the type of interaction is, we might call them high intent leads, but these are leads that have sort of clicked on an ad online, whether it's a video or an image, and they've come in through a variation of a funnel, which is like a sales page, a video, and they've scheduled a call. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And this is the first interaction a salesperson is having with that individual. How do they immediately build rapport? What should they be doing? What should they be doing? And how do we minimize the objections that could become apparent throughout that phone call?
Okay. So let me just back up quickly and just touch on a couple of things, because I think this is so important, because, as somebody that helps train a lot of salespeople and have done over the years, I think everybody, and I was guilty of it in my earlier years, we're always looking for that magic line. We were, especially the way sales used to be taught, right? Very strict on rebuttals and structured in the sense of, this is your initial part, your qualifying part, this is your presentation, and this is your closing, and that's where you need your closing line. That's where you need these rebuttals.
We used to have the gold files, with all the features and benefits, and there's like 20 pages of rebuttals.
And so there's a couple of things that are going on in the modern world. First of all, the consumer, the buyer, are so much more aware of that, and they're so conditioned. So I'm a big believer in trying to teach people to be different and get back to being human, right? Nothing wrong with sales scripts and having some word tracks, things like that. I'm a big believer on it, about it, but it's repetition that gets it built in, and then you've got to be authentic with it, and you've got to make it your own. So number one, there's no magic, word that's going to, or phrase at the end of a sales call is going to get somebody to close if you fucked it up from the beginning, right? And that's where it goes back to, excuse my French, obviously, but it goes back to from that first interaction, and that's really where rapport starts. Just to go to your point, it starts
instead of like
really
rattling off everything, like all the features and benefits. It's like, start with rapport. How do we do that?
Well, rapport is something that's continuous, right? And it's not really where people think it is, and especially it's so cringy. I have to listen to it all day, every day on plenty of sales floors. This fake rapport, these lies that go on the sales floor, and it becomes second nature to people. And it's that boring, oh no, you're a fisherman, or you're in the army, or you're this, or you're that. And there's all these fake rapports that these people are conditioned to understand what it is, and it just builds sales resistance, and it puts up walls for them. Our job is to disarm them and get past them, so that we can actually understand them. And that's really where rapport is built. It's asking questions, it's active listening, showing them that you're different and you care, and you're not just there with your own agenda. So that's where rapport starts, right? And
so disarming through active listening, you care, genuine care.
And good questioning, right? Okay, and then within that, that kind of ties into, whenever I start a call, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about rapport. How do I humanize this interaction? If it's a phone call or a Zoom call, obviously that's helping, right? So there's eye contact, there's posture, these things that will help you massively. But if you're selling on the phone, well, you've got to do a very good job of getting that to the point where you're different, because these people are getting a lot of phone calls. Depends if it's booked, obviously, and or if it's a cold call. There's different layers to what you can do, and different techniques you can use, and that's for another deeper training on that. But let's just to go to your point, you want to demonstrate very quickly in the process that you're there to listen and learn, and then you're tying in framing. So I'm always trying to say, look, this may not be the right fit for you, John. I don't know enough about your situation. That's why we're on the call. I'm really glad we're able to get together. But I'm okay saying, and I'm not saying this verbatim, but I'm okay saying that this, you may not be a good fit for our project or our deal or whatever it is that we're raising capital on or selling, right?
And you're disarming the right. Is that
part? Yeah, and you're kind of leaning away, and then if you lean away, it allows them to lean in a little bit more, and then this is a mixture of tonality, framing, and then demonstrating that rapport building that carries on throughout, showing that you're listening, showing that you care, showing that you want to understand what their situation is, what got them on the call. Okay.
Okay.
And
And as
then,
far as tonality is concerned, like, is there a way that they should act? Like, is there something conscious that they should be doing with the tone of their voice? Like, should they be sounding like relaxed? Should they be sounding curious,
yeah,
authoritative?
well,
Like,
when
should
they
they be?
start, yeah, there's going to be conscious, obviously. You know, that repetition makes that subconscious and unconscious. But initially, you want to, you know, you want to be neutral with your language. Here's what triggers sales resistance. Oh, John, I can definitely help you. We've definitely got the solution. Well, I don't know enough about this guy to know that this is the right fit for him. So how can I state that up front? But because of the bad training, and then a lot of salespeople learn from other salespeople on a floor. It's the blind leading the blind. So it's not their fault. They can
Yeah,
be
it never
helped and they
sounds
can be
right.
improved.
Whenever someone looks at the ads, oh, so you're in the market for real estate development investment. Well, yeah, I'm shopping around. Well, we can definitely
I'm
take
just
care of you.
curious because what you're doing, you're saying that is you're almost making them feel like they're backed up against the wall, and if they say yes to you, they're trapped in. So, you know, I can jump in there. So, hey, John, I saw that you downloaded the ad, you watched the video about the project that we're doing. Really appreciate you're hopping on the call. Now, just before we kind of move forward, I'm not entirely sure if what we're doing over here is a good fit for you and whether or not this would even fit in to kind of what you're looking for. You know, I don't know enough about you, but I'm happy to spend a bit of time and kind of get a better sense of what it is that you're trying to figure out. And then perhaps if I can help you, we can explain kind of where this fits in, and if not, maybe I might be able to point you in a better direction. You know, there's a few different, so you're kind of saying that I'm okay to say no to you. I'm here to help you. And also I might be able to give you a bit of value anyway, right? So there's a lot going on there. But mainly you're disattached from it, and they're feeling that. Now that versus somebody coming on the phone very strong, oh, this is amazing, I'm glad you got on, we can definitely help you if you're interested in real estate, X, Y, Z. And you'd be shocked at the percentage of people are still selling. You know, here's the problem with sales, and not to get off track. Think about, I use this example a lot. Think about a heart surgeon, right? Okay. How many years you got to go to school to become a heart surgeon? How many hundreds of thousands of dollars you've got to pay?
Mm-hmm.
You don't just go into the ward one day and you're given a scalpel and there you go and you said, okay, go commit, go and operate on this guy. However, in the world of sales, where you can earn more than a heart surgeon, you absolutely, day one, for the most part, you're given the scalpel and you say, go ahead and operate on this guy and perform heart surgery without the skill set. So, and then people make some money because the numbers game plays a part. But if you've got better quality in selling, you're always going to get outperform. And again, there's lots of things that go. I've been to plenty of companies where I haven't performed and there's other factors. And if you really drill it down, there can be, it can be timing, it can be getting in the right click of some companies. That's absolutely, can be part of it. But again, that's about staying and being in the right opportunity. Sometimes or for a lot of the times, it's mindset. People are human. You can't forget that, right? So we can have other things going on in our life that actually can affect our sales performance. So a lot of things, I'm a big believer in self-analyzing. I do a lot with myself, my own pitch, or my own presentation. I want to listen to my own calls a lot and see what I can't see in the moment. And I think, okay, I could have done that better. Okay, I challenged the guy too much there, maybe. And again, it's nice that I have a coach as well.
You have a coach?
Oh yeah, in maybe 10 different areas. Well, I say 10. I would definitely say I've got 5 coaches in my circle of different areas, different things that I'm always trying to improve, right? From my mindset,
consistently
to my health,
self-educating,
to my sales. Yeah, always, because I don't know everything, right? I know what I know, right? And I'm able to help facilitate an environment when I'm coaching people for them to go through the basically the self-awareness you need in sales to be able to improve and make those changes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting off track from the topic.
Would you say then, like, most objections that people are then facing, it would be fair to say it's almost like self-inflicted. Like, if they don't take the time to do all that, to focus on disarming, to focus on their tonality, to focus on actively listening, to focus on building genuine rapport, at least in the first instances of a call, objections are going to arise anyway. Well, I suppose.
Well, yeah.
Well, there's always going to be obstacles to some degree on a sales call, but objections, you can treat them as objections, or you could treat them as part of the process. But if you're looking at it as a roadblock, that would be self-inflicted.
Yeah. And then there's different levels. There's early objections, and then there's the later ones, right? but it does typically come down to how you're managing the sales call, the sales interaction from the get-go. And then you're again not making it about that result. So many people are so eager to get down there, pitch them, and then basically get their pitch off and ask for the business, and they think that's going to work. And then they wonder why they get these objections. But it's typically because they're breaking rapport. They're coming across like they're only interested in their own agenda. Okay, and then they're using maybe language that screams to these people. I've heard this before. There's lots of language that I hear, and I won't go into all of it, but there's language out there that, it's too definitive. Like earlier on in the sale, you want to have a lot of neutrality. I possibly could help. This might be a fit. Maybe, I'm not entirely sure at this point. And then you get to a point where certainty has to come in, right? And again, when you're showing and you're talking to these people, and then you're demonstrating where you're the expert, that's when you want to have certainty. Okay, based on what you've told me, John, boom, here's what we can. And then when you're talking about your product, your service, and you're the expert, if it's real estate, you're explaining why this is such a good deal or whatever it may be. But you're not
you
trying
want them to buy into you first before the deal.
They've got to buy you, otherwise they're not. The deal is secondary. If they don't trust the person they're talking to and don't connect with them, and the only way you do that typically is getting out of your own way. You don't make it about you. You have to make it about them. You have to filter. It's a filtering system. You're trying to filter the people that have got a problem. Like, why is this important to them? What's got them on the call? What are they trying to achieve? And then a big part of this, I would say, especially when you get into something technical, we'll make it about the product. We'll make it about the real estate deal. Or make it about gold. Or make it about this. But in essence, that's not what you're selling. You never are. You're selling the result. Okay, that's what you're selling. So you have to get them attached to the result through your process, and you're future pacing that. What is it you're looking for? What happens if you don't get it? Okay, what have you tried in the past? You've got to get them to, like you said yesterday, take ownership of their problem, and then take ownership that they want to solve their problem, and now's the right time to solve it, right?
Okay. So that's a really important point, actually, to actually consider that as much as you've sort of like you revise for an exam and study for an exam, you understand your investment, and investments can get complicated. It's not as there's so many things that we have to learn when it comes to raising capital, that when it comes to selling something that's regulated, that's something that's complicated. There's a lot of different moving parts to it. There's a point where the investors can get involved, and there's this whole journey that you have to take them on so that they understand how their money is being put to work, and where on the other end, when they come out of it, that they're going to have this result. And to have all of that in your mind, to learn it all, and to then be able to articulate it in a confident manner, that's like one of the big challenges most of these guys have, because when they're given that scalpel and they've got to jump in and they've got to start performing surgery, their main thing is, I don't want to sound like an idiot. I need to be an expert in the product, because if I'm an expert in the product, then they're going to feel like they're in good hands. So they spend a lot of time on that. But then they can get trapped in this world of like feature benefit, process, when in reality, what they've got to do is they've got to go back to that neutrality, right? That disconnect initially, and to say, we're going to go through the concept and the details, but we need to make this about you. And the way we do that is we talk about why this is good for you, and that relates to the outcome, right? And so how do we tie the outcome to their needs? This is where like discovery comes in, right? We've got to start figuring out how to position yourself to.
This is why I would suggest most people spend most of their time in discovery, that conversation there. Make it as genuine and human as you possibly can. Okay, and you don't have to have your magic flow. Sometimes these conversations go in different directions, but you certainly, the danger that is always there is you getting down that rabbit hole of overload of information. So I am a massive believer in simplifying everything, and I will pre-frame it. I say, John, there's some complexities to any real estate deal, and there's going to be a level of due diligence that you're going to need to do, for example. But we'll get to that, and we have a real good process to make that really simple for you. Okay. Now we're talking about retail investors here. Obviously, when we're talking about higher level sophisticated buyers like private equity and institutional money, they got a team of analysts. They've got a pitch. So that part's always separate. They understand that that they've got a process to buy. And that's part of our job when we're talking to those type of people is, hey, listen, can you walk me through your acquisition criteria, the timelines? And these guys are very clear. Okay, we do this, and this. These boxes need ticks. This guy's got to sign off. And then you understand. So you can always hold them accountable to their timeline, right? And you use that to close your deal, and you have an understanding of it. And they've got a machine. They're pumping out decisions, right? Because honestly, deal. So it's a very different sale than an individual sale. They're not, emotionally attached to it in essence. However, there is the layers of it. You get the acquisition guy and you really have a conversation with them. I've done this plenty where I might dive into it and say, hey, listen, how do you get compensated? Is it bonuses? Is it quality of deal? And then you're trying to get in there. How long you been with the company? Show a bit of it. So there's things you could do. And if you can find out what drives them, you might have, and they've got more pull, or they're a champion for the guy that makes the decisions, or, there are ways to kind of humanize it within the institutional space.
And showing interest
is totally different. Yeah.
And ultimately with investors are generally successful people. They've either got a good job, they've made a lot of money. Showing an interest in what they've done, that's that curiosity. I mean, how curious do you get? There's also that. I mean, I remember listening to I went through that the straight line train, the videos for Jordan Belfort.
I was about to use that as my point because he says something that's really true about keeping them within the line.
Within the lines.
But there's definitely a balance. Sometimes people want to unload, so you have to allow it. But you don't want it to go off track. So you've got to find the balance of where that should be, because sometimes I'll allow it, I'll let people go off, and then, oh, by the way, John, and I'll transition them back in when I'm ready to get them back in and moving forward again. I'll do something that pattern interrupts them to get them back in, but I'll give them space. I'll give them space where needed, because I want them to kind of feel comfortable with me. And I'm also interested, some really good stories you can hear, but you can also, depends on how you frame it and what that conversation is. But that is about active listening. And you've got to come from a place of authenticity, because if not, if it's this fake bullshit that's out there, you're in, and they know it. They really do. They can smell it a mile.
They can smell it a mile off. They can tell if you're being fake, you're being fake, and eventually you'll be found out, right? So, right. Talking about another point, then we did touch on tonality and the way in which you can manage the way you sound. But Belfort even speaks a lot about that, and I refer to Belfort a lot because back when I was learning how to sell, that was every sales floor that I went to.
Well, I came up
always
that
way. That big long.
I came up that way, and it worked very well back in those times.
I don't know how well
25 years ago.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work now because it's cringeworthy.
Yeah.
When I hear, well, again, we know because we know the inner workings of sales and the mechanics, and maybe we're worse off, but half of these people have been pitched all day, every day, all these different products. And when somebody gets on and say, hey, what's your ballpark figure there, John, in your portfolio? It's just, I hear that word ballpark and I'm cringing.
Yeah.
I just say that, well, what's the approximate exposure you have in the portfolio, John? Just keep it simple. Like it's you've got more chance that way than the other way. I think the way I look at it, if I use the word ballpark and something that's very conditioned in the prospect to think, salesman, right? Salesman. And then, I'd much rather give myself the ability or take myself out of that risk, structure that risk away from me and use a neutral word, right? And also to go back to your question about tonality, early on in the conversation, you almost want to feel like a little bit confused, disattached, softer. Yeah. And then you can kind of build up. But, then again, John, if you can kind of perhaps tell me kind of what motivates you to get on the call or what it is you're looking for, if it is a fit, absolutely, I can kind of dive into this in more detail for you and get you, to a deeper understanding to the point where you can make an informed decision, and we can discuss next steps if it makes sense. Would that help you going through that process with me? When somebody agrees to that in that manner, you're kind of like, you're disattached, and then they're saying, yeah, that would really help me. This guy's that would help me going through that process. So now you've got permission, which is key to develop that rapport and ask them questions and dive deeper into their life and, just be genuine about it. When you start diving into discovery, you get these things. What is it? You look at, I'm just looking to diversify. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what does that mean? Diversify.
What does diversify mean? Yeah, it's like
what does it mean to them? That's a buzzword for these people as much as it is for us. So, okay, well, when you say diversify, John, can you be a little bit more specific? What makes you think that, and then I can use that to maybe bring up some pain or get them to verbalize some pain. When you say diversify, can you perhaps explain why you feel you're not diversified? Where are the gaps? and then you can get them saying, well, I'm this, I'm that.
And this is in the first couple minutes. Like, so it's like, hello, John, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with yourself? What kind of investments are you involved with? You've seen our thing. You're acting curious.
Yeah.
Oh, like what? You're diversifying. Okay, so what does that mean? So you haven't started pitching your thing yet. You're still asking questions. You're still finding out. You're still in that discovery phase.
Yeah. Well, I don't even like the word pitching that much because it's got a connotation to the old thing. Because the moment you get into that realm, you do get into that features, benefits, presentation style of a thing. And now there's a level of presentation, but again, I'm very much conversational in my approach, right? It's not this big pitch, and it used to be coming from the world we came in these faster investments, and you were right. Let me tell you this, and it was again Jordan Belfort is very much, based on that, and he is probably a really good example of the old way to sell, right?
Yeah,
and it can still work, and people will still buy, but if 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 people buy from a sales guy like that, they're leaving a lot of money on the table, and then actually not. They're basically doing a disservice to their job, and their job is to solve problems, and they're solving less problems and more. If they had a skill set of sales that could help convert more people, right? Because the key, like I said, we talked about it yesterday, I think about Mayweather, or maybe that was on an offline conversation about
we had
adjusting.
It was on the
call,
that was recorded. People should listen.
Right.
Yeah,
because it's about adjusting to who's in front of you, right?
yeah.
If you have a certain style, you're limited to the type of people you can close, and if you can only talk in your language. I did this sales course once called the Bank Code. My wife still uses it today on real estate for real estate clients. And it's got these 4 cards, and it's got the personality types in the way that we buy. Right? It's amazing, right? And you get these cards, you've got all these words on them, and then you basically there's a scoring system, and you figure out what you are. Right? There's a blueprint, nurture, knowledge, and action. Most sales guys, they're action, right? And what it hit me like a ton of bricks was I'm an action, and I'm selling to, like, I've always sold like an action, and I still did well. And I thought, my God, I left so much money on the table because I didn't talk the language of a knowledge. Like, a knowledge is a guy that researches, a knowledge is an engineer type, and these guys do need research, so you can present things that way to them. Then somebody who's nurture is a bit more focused on the environment. So maybe in the real estate deal, you say, hey, actually, our project is XYZ. It actually creates, and that might connect them a little bit more to pull them into the deal. A blueprint is more of a lawyer type. He needs everything structured and you mapped out for him. So you set expectation and the next steps with clarity for him. So the action, he wants to know the payoff. He wants to know how much money am I getting, how far, and who else is in the deal. And, maybe the CEO, he knows this guy and that celebrity. That's the type of things that would attach that guy. So my point is, there's 4 different ways we talked about how to present the same information, but you've got to know your prospect in front of you. Now, obviously, it depends if you've got the ability to do that. But like I said, my wife will use these cards when she first screens somebody, and then she knows, okay, this one I can't be late for. So,
and by the way, are these cards that you literally have in front of you on the table?
Yeah. There was a website, and we did this 3-day sales training course. It was awesome. I think the company went down, sadly, but because we want to get certified to coach it, but it's really, really interesting stuff. But it shows you that people buy based on and that all the influence comes from their parents and their life, their upbringing. But to give you a quick example, like, she had this one, she knew she was a blueprint. Her car broke down. She knew she was going to be late. Now, you can't help that she's going to be late, but you can't be late for a blueprint, right? You've got to be early, right? Because you're losing respect straight away. So she called and said, hey, listen, I'm having car trouble. I'm going to be running 15 minutes late. And he was and they talked. And then when she did the cards, they talked about it again. She's like, I knew I had to call you because I understood that that's important to you, right? So, whereas and
they received that, and that was well received.
Yeah. It's real fun when you do it to people, and they had this system where you could give a prospect well,
you feel like you're winning. You've got them figured out. Yeah. Like, you're on this card.
They taught you how to speed. You could go on their social media and look at them, and you could suss out, okay, that's a knowledge just from the comments and the car they drive and the this and that. It was really interesting to give you more information of how to speak their language is basically what it's about. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how we got down that rabbit hole. But
no, that's really valuable. I think we should probably try and hope you've got a couple of those cards. We can maybe try and use them.
Yeah, we've got. We used to have a website. You'd give the
and that company's gone down?
I think so. She's got a book out there. Her name's Cheryl something or other.
Okay.
And her partner was from Germany or Sweden or something. She was European. She was American, but it was called The Bank Code. is what it was called.
Okay. Well, so if you're a salesperson, you're in this situation and you're thinking, okay, I understand my opportunity. I understand my project. I've got all those details in my mind, and I have cheat sheets in front of me, and I've got this available. But then you kind of you switch gears and you kind of focus on these cards or some kind of strategy that revolves around discovery and understanding who you're speaking to.
Yeah.
And if that's in front of you first, and that's your mission number one, it's
Yeah.
just build rapport by neutralizing the conversation, to ask questions and care about that person and just genuinely engage before you even go into a conversation about the details of the project.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're, I think a nice way to say that is you want to get them curious enough about your project to then actually discuss it, right? Would you say that's the safest way to start, quote unquote, pitching?
Well, yeah. You want to make sure you've covered everything and understand, their reason for being there and their reason for doing it, and what the cost of inaction is for them. I'll typically want to get that early or at the end of the discovery.
So how do we do that? Like, because I remember
I ask one question.
I'll throw another thing in there. Another thing in there, because yesterday we did touch on this very briefly. Right at the end of our conversation, it was about the sort of fork in the road. Are we going to do the how first and then the why, or are we going to start with the why first, then the how? Right? How does this work, and how do you get paid, or how do you make money on this, or etc. Or why is this a good thing for you? So how do you make that determination? Or are you just saying, no, we're going to start with the why first by default?
You know what? Sometimes it depends. I mean, you can have a way to do it, but you've always got to get it back to an emotional state. And once you've got the answer, the real answer of the cost of inaction for them, you can always pivot it back to, if you have to go to presentation mode, right, where it's logical and factual, you can then just bring up that cost of inaction for them. So let's give an example, John. Let me ask you this. Let's say that I don't know, because I speak to a lot of people get busy, especially retirement age. There's always something going on, and whether it's health, this, that, the other. And let's say that things get in the way and you don't end up doing this, and you're not able to to get what you mentioned you wanted to get, right? Because you've gone through that in the discovery, like, why are you doing it? What's holding you back? What are you trying to achieve? And they give you all this information. I want to put my kids through college. I want to, have a better retirement. I don't know, whatever it is, right? They've given you that information. And that's the key to get it. If you haven't got that early or in the discovery, you're not ready, because you've got no ammo at that point. You're just hoping. You need to have something to be able to hold them accountable with their own words, right? So then you've got that, and say you're not able to get X, Y, Z. Like, what does that honestly look like for you? If you're not able to solve this issue, and you get them to verbalize it, and they say, okay, well, whatever. And there's signs in that. If a guy says, well, I'll be okay, well, you've not done enough in discovery. You need to go back and dig deeper then. So
how do you feel about? Sorry to cut you off. How do you feel about those individuals who, before they start asking all these questions, of course, they'll write them down. They'll have them in front of them on a piece of paper. Some, in a lot of cases, just to kind of like nudge them in themselves in the right direction. If they're not able to just get into a flow with somebody, but if before you start asking those questions and you're basically kind of like at loggerheads with an individual, like you haven't got that vibe yet. It's not flowing. The conversation is not smooth. They're kind of standoffish from the get-go. You're trying to be neutral. You're trying to say, hey, listen, I want to get you, I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for you. I want to get you the right kind of information across. Like, what are you doing with your current investments? Yeah, listen, I saw the ad. I just want to see what this thing's about. What is it? And they are standoffish, and you can't you're finding it difficult to challenge that. Do you just jump into Q&A, like questioning?
No, you can push them away. So sense a bit of frustration, John. There's different levels of this push pull. Well, we did talk about push pull yesterday, right?
Let's go into that a little bit more, because I feel like that's a common one. Because people come off a
levels,
Facebook
you can
ad.
almost push them away, and then you always got to get them to try and pitch you. In essence, I'm always going to find a way. Somebody's cold and one, they're very hard to open up. I'm going to ask them a question that's going to get them to start explaining kind of what they're doing there, what they're looking for, what they feel they like about. And I try sometimes use a thing of, John, can you do me a favor? Regardless whether you do this or not, That's not really the point. I'd love to know I'm always curious to know kind of what you think of this deal. Like, if you had to maybe point out some of the bad things that have jumped out at you, what could you maybe explain them? Get them to kind of say, oh, well, I think this is this and this is that. Okay, got it. And is that something that would stop you doing it? Or do you think, is that something you could get past if you had maybe some answers to those questions? And all of a sudden you're working collaboratively with these people and you're walking through the deal. And all of a sudden, they feel listened, heard and understood. But they're human at the end of the day. So there's different ways. And again, you can't close everybody. And some people need space. Like you can give them space, but you've just still got to have an agreement on the next steps, whether that is a second phone call or whatever that is. Some people absolutely need space. And I think the better you get, you've got the ability to understand, okay, if I push here, I'm going to lose the deal. If not, I need to back off and live to fight another day, right? So, but again, that doesn't mean that you don't have a next step. So, okay, no problem, John. It sounds like you might need a bit of space. Here's what I suggest we do. I'm going to give you some homework. Boom, get agreement. You've got to still keep them kind of engaged with you. And then what we're going to need to do, because my team have me booked back to back. So let me pull up my calendar and I'll see if we can find a gap for you, right? Again, this language is very intentional. So they're like, well, hold on a minute, this guy's not, it's not, and I'd hear it all day. Yeah, I could call you anytime. When would work for you? Well, nobody wants to talk to a guy like that, do they? Okay. Let's be honest. And
so you're saying things, you're showing sort of like seniority and positioning by saying, look, my team, they're keeping me busy. So let's pull up the calendar, see when we can get you in on the spot. How's Thursday looking for you? Let's have a look.
Give me a time on Thursday and I'll see what I can. Then they give me a time, whatever time they say. I'm going to shift that around. Okay, I can get you in here, there. Perfect. Okay, that's locked in for you, John. Okay. Now, so between now and then, let's get some agreement in what we need to do so that we can make sure that we get the most value out of the next call. What is it, just so I can be prepared, what are some of the things that you think you need to go over? And maybe you keep, and from there, sometimes you can uncover the real objection. Oh, well, I need to do this, do that. Okay, got it. So if you have that in place, and maybe it's I want to talk to a referral, this, that, the other. Okay, perfect. So if I can get you a referral, what sort of questions would you be asking them? What is it you'd want to know? And you're digging a little deeper into what it's always trying to find the real objection. And then if you can get to that, you can diffuse it, disarm it, discuss, clarify what's going on with it, and figure out, can we move past it?
Yeah.
As a team, that's I'm not saying that my way is the only way, but I try to keep it as human as possible in terms of the human behavior, right? And we can work collaboratively to get around a problem, an issue. I'm not trying to say that, the deal I've got, or there's no issues, or there's no challenges with everything you've got. There's always going to be that. There's always going to be likes and dislikes. It's if you've got their objective and what they're trying to achieve, then you can always tie the product, the service, the deal to that. Okay, I understand that that's a bit of a challenge for you. However, if we focus on your main objective being X, Y, Z, does that at least tick the box there for you? Yes, it does. Okay, great. And then
Okay. So let's throw in the wishy-washy, slippery, that slippery sort of wet fish kind of persona that you could be dealing with, that just kind of is always looking to slip away from that.
The one that won't commit at the end to anything.
Well, we're not even at the end yet. Like, they seem to answer your phone calls, but they're just slippery with their answers. They never seem to fully commit to anything, but they seem to be ready to hear you, and they're always picking up the call. They do schedule the next call with you. How do you deal with that kind of individual? Like,
well, you've got to put things in place to get them to take action, because it goes like anything. It's if we're buddies and I give you my word, and but we're going to go to the gym, we're going to just work out together, go to the gym tomorrow. Then tomorrow I cancel. So okay, no problem. I'll give them a pass. And the next day I cancel. And then I say, I'm motivated, I want to go to the gym, and I keep cancelling. Well, what are you going to believe, my words or my actions? Exactly. So it's the same with a prospect. We have to create our sales funnel and our process, giving them every chance to disqualify themselves, right? That's fine. We're trying to get the people that are real, ready, and this solves the problem. Our job is to uncover their problem and match that with what we have, and then help walk them through, not get in our own way and cause more sales resistance and more challenges for them. Most people are typically causing more challenges for themselves, hence why they're having to scramble at the back end of a sale with all these wonderful word rebuttals and everything else, right?
So if we're going to put rebuttals into a box, because I think initially this conversation was about dealing with tonality. How should you engage and build rapport? and then dealing with rebuttal handling. So tonality and rapport is really that discovery phase early on, being neutral,
that's
disarming the
credibility, the trust that
individual.
you're building, the credibility and trust. Them feeling, I feel comfortable with this guy. I'm going to open up. Like, I don't struggle to get somebody's dollar amount in a portfolio, right? And here's how I do it. And this is this is because I've got the experience and I've dealt with it. I will get early on in the conversation. These people were like, "Oh, what have you got in the portfolio, John?" Or some of these juniors I hear, and they say, "Oh, yeah, is it above 50 or below 5?" I said, "Well, why are you going to box yourself in like that?" Now, when I get somebody, I said, "Don't worry about the money. If you know how much they've got. If someone says they've got several accounts, then you know they've got money, right? So you don't need to get that dollar amount. So again, you got to know when to adjust in the moment and use some common sense. But for me, I'm always going to reframe. So, John, maybe, I know we haven't spoken. Let me give you a little snippet. I don't want to make it all about me, just so you understand kind of my background. I say, I've been lucky enough to work in 10 countries globally in finance, alternative finance, for the last 25 years. And I've worked, and this is when I'm telling more of a story, right? Because these can really help you. And I say, look, I've worked with everything from small 7-figure portfolios to the billion-dollar portfolios on teams of guys, right? One thing I've noticed is a consistency in the way they analyze deals and the way they structure their portfolio. Boom. So what you've done in that essence is any guy that's got 500 grand, 800 grand, you've all of a sudden you've made him feel, oh, this guy knows how to deal with my money. And some guy that's got 10 mil, you're in the bowl, but some guy's got 20, 50.
Just share a story.
They're going to, because you've pre-framed it. You understand that these things are going on. Why do I need to trust this guy? Why should I talk to this guy? Has this guy dealt with me before? Can he handle my finances? So all of a sudden you've got a guy that has got 1.3 million, and these guys, and some of these junior people or people that don't know, maybe a little scared of the money. They might think, oh my God, this guy's got 1.3 million. And then the talk, it comes out in their tonality and their language. And the guy, the prospect can sense that, and you're losing credibility. And their certainty levels are going down. And our job when you're talking money is to make them feel comfortable, safe, because we've done it time and time again. Like, if you roll $10 million tomorrow into a couple of deals, that's nothing. It's normal.
So and I think that could be translated, like, when you talk about those salespeople they've been doing it for a long time, they've managed to sell over time to a really high level where they're doing like $1.5 million deals. And this is retail investors, by the way. So I know on an institutional side, you can go hundreds of millions on a single deal, but that's different. That's dealing with big banks and you're just brokering a deal. And that's more like just filling out form
money, isn't it? It's
everyone detached from it.
Yeah, attachment to that money. Yeah,
exactly. This is more dealing with an individual. So there's a lot more selling
their money, their whole life, right? So there's a sense of pride and a sense of
their stockpile. Yeah. And so you're dealing with these types of personalities, and it's like the longer, the salesperson that's longer in the tooth can say, yeah, I'm confident with this. And when they're speaking with those people, it comes across, that confidence comes across. Yep. And they're able to say, oh, and then share a story, genuinely, because they've done it before. It makes life easier, right? Because they can adapt at that level. But for the person that hasn't dealt with a person,
well, I see two things happen. I see guys that have dealt with that money, but they're not framing it and they're not using it to their advantage. That's one scenario. And then the other is, there's somebody that hasn't. They've got to use and lean on people in the team, right? Well, John, look, we're a team that we've got guys that have dealt with X, Y, Z. So you can always, that's the same as like a brand new real estate agent coming in, working in a local real estate office. That office may have done hundreds of millions of dollars. So you've got to lean on that track record early days. When I was in commercial real estate, before I'd done sold a deal before, and we were selling McDonald's, Dollar General, Family Dollar, Starbucks, these deals at the end of that period. But at the start, when you're calling, we didn't have a track record, right? So we had to lean on somebody in the office. Look, John, our team just closed on this CVS out here in Phoenix last month, and I saw that you own a CVS. We wanted to know whether you'd see some value in maybe understanding some of the comps and some of the offers we got. Would that help you, that type of information? Boom. And you get a conversation going. So, and when you're young in sales, it's okay to, well, again, depends on how the structure of the sales floor is set up. But when you're young, it's okay to say, look, I don't actually know. I'm quite new at this. But the good thing is I work on a team with some guys that are really experienced, and they'll be able to help you explain this deal to you in plain English. And what's really good about them is that they keep it really, really simple, because there's a lot of people with money in the US that I see that are not sophisticated. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. They don't understand certain deal structures, certain deals, real estate and everything else, but they've done really well for themselves, right? And they don't want to be confused about, 10-year cash flows and projections and pro formas and cap rates and all these different things that can be really confusing. And the sales guy's job is to know who needs that information and who doesn't, right? So that's what happens.
Who's the blueprint? Who's the action taker?
Yeah, exactly. Goes back, helps, right?
Yeah.
So it really
does.
We
need those cards.
Yeah, I've probably a big sum out. They got dust on, but yeah, I think that's so important, right? It's knowing who you're talking to and keeping it really, really simple. I like to keep it as simple as possible and then go in depth if you need to. That's your judgment call. But if you do it the other way, you're in big trouble. That's when deals get stalled and you lose that predictability, you lose control, they gain control, you're playing forever chasing around, and then you're in the box of a needy salesman that's unprofessional, doesn't know his own time, because all we have is our time and we have to guard it. And I use that on a phone call. John, I get it. I get you need space. I can respect it. Let me just explain to you. The only thing I have is my time, right? So I've got to guard it and I've got to give it to the people that value it. And I'm happy to walk through this process with you here. This is what I suggest as the next step. Are you comfortable with that? Bang, bang, bang. Okay, you're giving them a friendly, you're setting the scene to say, you respect my time, right? So then if they, play you around, you can stand them up on the next call if you get them or whatever it may be. But
how would you do it? How would you stand someone up professionally and carefully?
Well, I mean, I would, again, when you do it up front like that, you've got ahead of it. Here's the key. And again, it comes with experience. Because we've been doing it so long, we understand all the speed humps that stop a deal, that kill deals. Like what I talked about, me just, not having a firm appointment follow-up set. These things kill deals. Me not setting expectation, these kill deals. I know to get ahead of that stuff early, and that's what I'm doing with that. I know that if I don't tell this guy, make him understand that my time's valuable now, I've got the chance to lose him. Yeah, no problem, John. You can call, when would work for you? Next week, anytime, pick a day. No, I'm going to say, John, happy that you need time. I get it. I'll respect it. How long do you think you need? Are we talking 1 day, 2 days? Okay, great. 2 days, perfect. Okay, we booked the time in. I'm happy to talk to you, and I'll give anybody my time that has interest in doing this, and you've got them that way. So the one thing that we've got is our time. That's our only commodity. So I hope you can respect that time. If you can't make it, this is how I do it. If you can't make it, do me a favor, shoot me a text message, or there'll be a link for you to reschedule. And then that way I can have one of my assistants reach out and see if they can get you back on my calendar, to reschedule. Is that something we can agree upon? Boom. And you've got it that way. It's done. So there's kind of logic behind why I'm asking them, because somebody else will take that, because we're getting inundated, and then it ties back to urgency, right, John? The reason I say that is because we're inundated with leads coming through everyday inquiries, right? We're getting we're getting to that point of critical mass now where we may not be able to keep up. So if you can't make it, it's okay. I understand life happens, but please do let us know, because we can give that slot to another investor that's kind of more ready for this, right? Some version of that.
So hey, there's other people like you that we're speaking to. Just
so you're ticking how many boxes you're ticking: the urgency, the framing, and the status. You're doing all of that, and then you're making sure that they understand that this guy knows his shit, and he's not going to be pushed around because he's done this before. So you're building that certainty and that conviction in what you do, right?
Dude, I love these conversations. I feel like it's been so long since I've been on the phone and started selling myself. I mean,
you're the visionary nowadays, mate. You're off the tools, as they say in the UK.
I'm off the tools. Yeah, I'm listening to you like I'm learning for the first time. Like, oh yeah, have I done that before? Have I done that in the past? Like, I think a lot of people who are listening to this are probably going through the same experience in their mind. It's like, you kind of travel through to your last phone, your last calls, your last Zoom calls, the interactions you've had, the deals you've won, the deals you've lost. I think there's always something to be gleaned from these conversations.
Yeah, remember, we're talking high level, right?
I mean, we haven't gone into the details.
Really break this stuff down on a micro level. We're talking more macro, more 40,000.
We haven't gone into systems yet. You spoke about checking things off. There is actually a checklist. There is actually a checklist.
Exactly, and that's how and when you repeat that, it becomes second nature. Then you can start to get creative on how you implement it. But you're following somewhat of a path from, the interaction, the initial stage to the discovery stage, where you're going into their pain, their problem, their payoff. And then you're moving into, okay, let's present the solution. And then boom, the commitment and the agreement stage of the conversation is where you're asking for the next step, right?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I get so excited listening to these processes, because the sales process is it can be transferred. And if people have got heart and they're happy to get on the phone, they've got they've got the ability to effectively speak to humans, to talk to people, to articulate, to try to convince someone that they have something that's worth listening to. If you have those base level, that foundation, coupled with strategy, a process, and skill that you can develop, that you can train, that you can work on, you're going to become a mean machine when it comes to sales. I mean, you'll lose it if you don't practice, like I feel like I have. But I feel like, to be honest,
one thing I'll put on the end of that, and this is again, because there's a certain camp that believe in being really aggressive, and there's a camp that aren't. I'm kind of, the way I look at it is, I don't think there's anything wrong with being say aggressive, but respectfully bold. Okay, we'll put it that way. Respectfully
that's
bold.
a very nice way. That's the British.
At the end, like, what you can't do is come back from being too aggressive, right? So you're better off being respectfully bold towards the end with somebody, where you've given yourself more chance to close them in a more consultative approach, right? Especially with some of these types of deals, real estate deals and things like that, because you're in it for the long term, and you're going to be re-upping these people into different deals, and you're building a long-term client that will trust you over time. So it's very different than selling them, a quick, discounted, box of whatever it may be, or whatever. You get my point, right? A quick weekend getaway, or whatever the product is. But I think you can always add that on at the end, and stand people up and challenge them in the right way. But again, if you do not believe in what you're selling, you're done for.
Hey, can this be put down? Can we create like a decision tree? Is there a possibility? Is there a way to create almost like a decision tree on, like, as you're going for a sales call, to sort of factor in every single point that we've covered today, and the many more, all these different checkpoints and stuff? Do you reckon we could go to AI and say, make us a tree?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's the flow. It's the flow of a sales conversation.
Yeah.
And actually, I used to have one when I worked in finance for private equity on business funding. I had this map of, where you would take a sales conversation, where you would, all the way down to where you would actually go and place the file, right? If it was this file, that file, it would show you which lenders to go to. But it all started from the sales conversation, the qualification. Have they got a business? Have they got revenue? What is the need? Is it short term, long term? What's the use of funds? All these different things. It was really interesting, and it gave me that, what you're asking there, kind of, I can see it.
Yeah.
But to get that, my advice to all of that stuff is, once it's become second nature, that's when it becomes more, it pays you more, because everything's going to be robotic at the start to a degree when you're learning something new. Even if I decide to change certain things in my process, I can do it very quickly now. You could give me a script right now, and I could almost read it first time, like I've, done it for
Dude, I've jumped into companies where I haven't actually read the script. I'm reading it on the fly as I'm selling. I'm learning about the project for the first time as I'm selling it, and I've been successful doing that in the past as well. You're selling to one opportunity to a cohort of investors. Suddenly you get another opportunity that the company brings down. Hey, I need you to sell this. Load them up on this deal. See if they're interested.
That's right. Same. Go through the discovery. Why are they there? What are they looking for? What have they been looking at? What are they trying to achieve? Right. And what happens if they don't get this result they're looking for? That part's exactly the same. And then you say, okay, perfect. You're plugging in your deal at that point, right? So then if you need technicals, that can be done on the follow-up stuff, right? The technical stuff, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Disarming, rapport building, neutrality, and as far as rebuttals are concerned, if you're not planning ahead, you're going to see them. So you're going to have to deal with rebuttals. So as long as you're consistently planning ahead, you're getting the firm commitments, you're scheduling ahead of time, you're finding out enough early on so that you can address the problems in a consultative way, in a way that is almost like shared curiosity, right? You're helping them figure it out while you're figuring out with them, perhaps, if you have to go down that road, right? Lots of different ways, but I think from a high level standpoint, that kind of sums it up. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. This is a good call. We've got to pick another topic for the next time. We've got to start getting to work on these decision trees and strategies and
we can
checklists.
Build a bunch of stuff that can help salespeople. Some resources, some PDFs and things like that. Some questions.
Yeah.
But again, here's the thing that I see. Just one point before we go. And you won't see it in the stuff that we structure, because we've always got a structured sales pitch. There's so many sales rooms, floors, organizations that I've been in that do not have a sales process. One guy's doing it one way, one guy's doing it another way. It's the Wild West. And then and then there's multiple people coming on to a deal, so they're interacting with maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 salespeople, and who knows what damage has been done through that process, right? So I think, and again, this might be speaking more to sales managers and owners of companies, that if you don't have and you can't articulate your sales process to every single step, then you need to, stop and think how much money you're leaving on the table, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all about systems. You know that as a business owner, Sav.
Yeah.
And an entrepreneur. And
as a business owner, it's always the clearest thing. Sometimes that's hard to sell to the salesperson, that they need to follow a system, but to the owner, it's the easiest sell because we want to scale, right?
Yeah.
We want to have a system.
Even as down as I think we talked about it the other day, as simple as keeping notes in the CRM. Like I'm very detailed in my notes, right? Because this might sound callous, but if me and you are working and you died tomorrow and I'm working on a $2 million deal that we're supposed to be doing, and you got all the notes in your head, I mean, how does that help me?
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
How are you going to pay for my funeral?
Yeah, exactly. You pay for your funeral and a few whiskeys on you. But you get my point, right? So all of these things, there should be SOP, standard operating procedures in every business and scalable systems in every business. And sales is where it's all about sales, right? Obviously, there's the fulfillment and there's all these other things, and it starts with lead gen. But without selling, nothing happens in the business.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the most important part that most people forget. They get all these systems in place before and after, and they forget to have a system in place in the heart of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Firm agreement. All right, Gio. Till next time, we're going to have another, chit chat, and then we'll pick another topic, and we'll press record again and get another video up. All right, pal. Speak soon.